Twin girls knocked and said, "We heard you needed help on the ranch. Our papa loves you." The evening pressed in on the prairie with a slow, aching hush. Shadows lengthened across the tall grass until they seemed to swallow the earth, and the lone ranch house, standing weathered and gray, appeared more like an old man hunched against the horizon than a place meant for living. Inside, the rancher sat at a wooden table, one hand curled around a chipped mug of coffee gone cold. The fire in the hearth had burned to a red glow, and its light threw his face into lines too deep for his 33 years. His life had been plowed into the land like a furrow, every season carving him further into solitude. The knock at the door came faint at first, then again, 2 quick beats, a pause, then 2 more. He thought at first the wind had caught a loose shutter. But no, it was deliberate, timid yet steady, like the hand of someone who feared both being turned away and being let inside. He rose, his knees stiff from the day's labor, and opened the door. The last of the sun clung to the edge of the sky, and in that dim glow stood 2 little girls. They were no taller than his waist, twins, so alike it was as though a mirror had split and walked. Their cheeks were smudged with dust, their hands locked together, in desperate grip. One of them, braver than her own heartbeat, lifted her chin. "We heard you needed help on the ranch. Our papa loves you." The rancher stared, words lost. Behind them stood a young woman, no more than 20. Her dress was torn, her shoes scuffed from long walking, and her face bore the weariness of someone twice her age. Her eyes, though lowered, burned with something fierce. She was not the children's mother, too young for that, but the way she stood, her arms ready to pull them back to her, told of a soul shaped by protecting. The rancher knew her story before she spoke a word. The town had whispered it already. A father, drunk and cruel, had sold his daughter for coins. He had not cared who took her, so long as whiskey filled his cup. And here she was standing on his porch at sundown, a pair of little sisters pressed against her skirts. The rancher's throat worked. His ranch was failing, his debts a weight he could not lift. He was a man used to loneliness, not fatherhood, not company, not the responsibility of 3 souls. Yet something in the sight before him, dust on the children's faces, silence hanging from the woman's shoulders, struck deeper than reason. "Come in," he said, though his voice cracked like timber in a storm. The twins scurried past him, eyes darting around the dim interior, half in fear, half in wonder. The young woman followed, hesitant. Her head stayed bowed, but her eyes lifted once, briefly, catching his. In that single glance he saw a story she would not tell, suffering, endurance, and a dignity no cruelty could strip. She did not speak, not even when he asked if she or the children were hungry. The twins answered for her, nodding quickly. He realized then what the whispers in town had meant. She was deaf, they had said. Could not hear, could not speak. A broken thing. He thought he understood. He laid out bread and beans, the last of what he had cooked. The twins tore at the food hungrily, crumbs scattering across the table. The young woman ate little, her posture straight, her eyes always flickering toward the children. He watched her quietly, unsettled by her silence, yet drawn to it, as if it were not emptiness, but something waiting. When the twins drooped with sleep, he carried them to the small room that had once been his father's. He laid them side by side, their breaths evening out quickly, hands still linked even in slumber. Standing over them, a warmth swelled in his chest, foreign and startling. Back in the main room, the young woman stood near the door, as if ready to leave. He frowned. "It's night," he said. "Wolves roam. You're not leaving with them girls tonight." She hesitated, her hand on the latch, then let it fall. He spread a quilt on the bench by the hearth. She touched it lightly before sitting, her fingers brushing over the stitches. He returned to his chair. The fire crackled low, throwing their shadows together on the walls. "You don't hear me, do you?" he murmured. Her eyes flicked to him, but she gave no answer. He sighed, settling back. Maybe that's better. Talking's easier when no one answers. And so he talked about the fences that needed mending, the crops that had failed, the neighbors who barely nodded anymore. He spoke of the silence in the house, how it pressed on him like a weight each night. He spoke of things he had never told another living soul. She sat still, wrapped in the quilt, her eyes steady on him. He thought her deafness left her apart from his words, but he was wrong. Every syllable fell into her like water into parched earth. She heard everything, but years of cruelty had taught her to survive in silence. When at last he rose to put out the lamp, the house did not feel empty anymore. The fire's glow softened, and in the quiet, he sensed something he had long forgotten, a beginning. Days passed like threads woven into fabric. The rancher rose before dawn, mending fences, driving cattle. The young woman woke early too, her movements quiet but sure. She swept the dust, baked bread, patched torn clothes. The twins' laughter spilled through the yard, chasing chickens, running with sticks down to the creek. The rancher spoke often not to them, but to her. At first he thought he spoke to silence, confessing his burdens into air. He told her of the land's stubbornness, of debts that pressed him, of dreams buried in hard soil. He told her of the emptiness left by people who had chosen other roads. She never answered, yet her eyes held his words, as though storing them. The twins grew bold with him, climbing into his lap, tugging his beard, asking for stories. Awkward at first, he told them of horses, of storms survived, of small triumphs. Their laughter stitched seams in the hollow places of the house. More than once, when he glanced up, he found the young woman watching from the doorway, something unspoken softening her face. The town did not ignore. A widow arrived with eggs, her eyes sharp, her words coated in gossip. She whispered that the girl was deaf, cast aside by her own father, good for nothing. The rancher said nothing, but his jaw tightened, and when she left, he fixed the door hinge with more force than needed. That night, he told the young woman in low voice, "I don't care what they say. You've done more here in a week than most could in a month." Her hands trembled once, though she kept them folded. It was in the storm that the truth came out. Rain hammered the roof, thunder cracking. The rancher stood in the barn, speaking to her softly, his voice carrying all the things he thought she could never hear. "You don't hear me, but I wish you did. You've brought peace here I didn't know I was missing." Lightning split the sky. The twins shrieked, their small bodies trembling. Without thinking, the young woman ran to them and called their names aloud. Her voice, fragile but clear, rang against the storm. The rancher froze. He turned, staring. She had spoken. She could hear. Later, by firelight, her secret spilled. She had pretended silence all her life because words had earned her beatings. Silence had kept her safe from a father who punished sound. "I was never deaf," she whispered, voice halting, raw. "Only afraid to speak." The rancher sat still, the weight of her confession filling the room. He saw her then, not as broken, not as burdened, but as brave. Stronger than the land, stronger than silence. From that night forward, things shifted. Her voice, though rarely used, threaded through the house like music. He began to look for reasons to linger near her, helping lift a bucket, patching a fence side by side. His hand brushed hers once, lingering, neither of them pulling away. But peace is fragile. The father returned. A gaunt shadow of a man, drunk and mean, he came stumbling into the yard, demanding his daughter back. He sneered that she had tricked the rancher, that she was worthless. The twins clung to her, sobbing. The rancher stood firm, rifle in hand but lowered. His voice cut steady through the father's curses. "They belong here. Not as debt, not as burden, but as family." The father raised his hand, but the young woman did not cower. She stepped forward, voice clear now, breaking years of silence. "You don't own me. You never did." The drunkard faltered. His power, built on fear, broke under the weight of her words. He turned and stumbled away, swallowed by the prairie night. Silence fell, but it was no longer the silence of fear. At dusk, the rancher walked the prairie with the twins riding his shoulders, their laughter echoing across the land. The young woman walked beside him, her hand brushing his. The horizon burned with sunset, and for the first time, the rancher felt his house had become a home. And the old truth whispered itself across the wide, wild west. Family is not made by blood nor bought with coins. It is chosen, spoken, and stood for, sometimes with nothing more than a voice reclaimed. If this tale touched your heart, saddle up with us, subscribe, and ride along for more Wild West stories.